It's time once again for a look at Storm Watch. We'll talk about once again some developing heat across Texas. That's going to stick around a little bit later on. Some nice weather for the northeastern part of the country. But as we look at our tropical update, we're going to be looking at a hurricane which continues to strengthen in the eastern Pacific, and also a tropical storm we'll keep our eyes on as you look at the Atlantic basin. Let's check on the entire picture right now. This is the scene. Once again, we're going to be watching for Tropical Storm Alex as it churns its way on westward right now. Could be affecting the islands in a few more days. Otherwise, we're looking at some convection over the southwestern Bay of Campeche. Also looking at a hurricane which continues to strengthen at this hour off the coast of Mexico, but moving away from the coast at a pretty good clip. Let's go back to Tropical Storm Alex, 5 o'clock advisory, Eastern Daylight Time. There it sits well east of the islands. If you're plotting at home, 16.1 degrees north, 53.6 degrees west, or about 500 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. Top sustained winds 40 miles per hour. We thought it would be a little bit stronger than this, but once again, there's an upper level low just towards its west, and that's encountering and keeping a strong south-southwesterly shearing component over Alex right now, which is inhibiting it from developing any further at this time. Estimated pressure, 1,005 millibars. Let's take a close-up look at what's happening with Alex. And again, you can see Alex right here. This is a look at the islands. And again, the upper level low, which is spinning its way back towards the west. This, by the way, is helping to bring some of those stronger southwesterly winds aloft over Alex, blowing the thunderstorms apart. And that's the reason why Alex is not doing very well at the present time. Now, if Alex continues to move in generally a westerly course, sometime later this afternoon or by early this evening, tropical storm watches may go up across the northern islands, so we'll have to keep our eyes on that if it doesn't make a little bit of a comeback and starts moving in tandem with that upper level low off towards the west. But for the time being, it's going to be slow in developing because once again, Alex is encountering some hostile winds aloft. Farther eastward from there, we'll go off the coast of Africa, one wave after another. This one really noteworthy, though, because it's had a nice spin to it during the last 24 hours. It still does, but all the convection was well off towards its southwest. But now you can see some convection trying to develop near the center of circulation. If that continues to happen, we could have a developing tropical system here, maybe a depression, and maybe something even beyond that in a couple of days. So once again, the Cape Verde season, the Cape Verde Islands right in through here, and things are beginning to heat up right now, as they usually do as we get into August across the Atlantic basin. We'll show you what else is going on across the western Caribbean, and of course you can see for most of the Gulf of Mexico, void of any precipitation here and any thunderstorms, and what was trying to organize over the Bay of Campeche again, falling apart, and that system now beginning to move into Central America. Well, it's almost here as you take a look at the peak of the hurricane season into early September, but things really get going as we get into the month of August, which we now are. And once again, you can see as we look at the month of August, things really begin to dramatically increase as you take a look at tropical systems and their development during this upcoming month, and especially into early September. So once again, we'll take a look at what's happening as we look at the eastern Pacific Ocean right now. This is Hurricane Estelle. Estelle may become and be upgraded to a major hurricane this afternoon if it continues to develop like it has been, because it's for that, we'd call it a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, but the top winds would have to be exceeding 110 miles per hour. Now, some of the suggestions now, we think that the winds may be already up to about 90 miles per hour, but officially as of 2 o'clock this morning Pacific Daylight Time, 16.0 degrees north, 112.6 degrees west, or it was sitting about 500 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, and it was moving west at 14. Estimated pressure 979. There's that westward movement again, away from the coast. Doesn't look like it's going to be bothering anybody anytime.
morning. It's time now for Storm Watch. So far, we haven't had a whole lot of thunderstorm activity across the country, but that's going to be changing come later this afternoon. And in fact, some of the thunderstorms that do develop could be packing some very large hail and gusty winds too. And we'll show you where the bad thunderstorms will likely be occurring coming up in just a moment. But right now it's time for your tropical update. And as we take a look at the tropics, we have several noteworthy areas. First of all, we have a big hurricane, Hurricane Estelle in the Pacific. But we also have a tropical storm in the Atlantic, Tropical Storm Alex, which is right here. And we have two more areas of disturbed weather, one just to the west of Alex and the other south and east of Alex. And we'll say more about that coming up in a moment. But first of all, again, the latest information that we have regarding Tropical Storm Alex. It continues to more or less hold its own. Right now it's packing winds of 40 miles per hour, and right now it's pulling off towards the west-northwest, so some slight change, at least as far as direction. Now west-northwesterly at about 15 miles per hour. The latest satellite picture shows that we're still seeing some fairly concentrated area of convection, the brighter shades of oranges and reds, indicating where the heaviest showers and thunderstorms are occurring. But the odd thing with this is that all the convection is taking place on the north side, all to the north, the center of circulation. Right now the center of circulation is right about here or so. So this is still showing us that this tropical storm is undergoing a lot of wind shear, a lot of strong south and southwesterly winds flowing in across this area. And that wind shear is having an impact on the tropical storm because it's inhibiting the tropical storm from developing any further. Now, the forecast models do suggest that possibly as we go along in time, that the winds will start to ease up a little bit. And so as the wind shear starts to slacken, there is a chance that Tropical Storm Alex will further intensify. But at least for the time being, at least for the next 12 to 24 hours or so, it will more or less hold its own, be status quo, and we'll see very little change in intensity, at least through today. Now, elsewhere, though, as we were mentioning, we have this little disturbed area to the north of Puerto Rico. Just a very disorganized area of showers and thunderstorms, not really organizing, and that too slowly drifting off towards the south and the west. And it may eventually bring a few more clouds eventually down towards Puerto Rico, but right now it's just kind of moving around aimlessly across the Atlantic. A little bit farther out, though, we check out these tropical waves rolling off the African shoreline. Yet another tropical wave is just coming off the coast, and here's another tropical wave just to the west of that. And with this particular tropical wave, we have been seeing kind of a twisting, turning motion with the clouds, which is indicative of some mid and upper level circulation. So at least there appears to be some type of circulation with this tropical wave. And of course, we'll be monitoring that as well as it continues to move towards the west at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Now, across the Caribbean, very quiet for those of you vacationing or cruising around this area. Fair skies across most of the eastern and central Caribbean. But elsewhere, we've had a few clouds kind of passing south of Cuba this morning. A few clouds and some spotty showers, too, along the coastal waters of Nicaragua and Honduras, but nothing of any great consequence. And likewise, too, the Gulf, kind of quiet right now. And as is so typical, at least for June and July, those are kind of quiet months in the tropics. But as soon as we hit August, we start to see a greater and greater frequency for tropical storms and hurricanes. So things really start to get active during August. And then things actually climax right here on September the 10th. That marks the peak of the hurricane season for the Atlantic. Well, speaking of hurricanes, well, we do have a bona fide hurricane right now. It's in the eastern Pacific, Hurricane Estelle. It continues to intensify. Right now, maximum sustained winds at 110 miles per hour, and it's moving towards the west. Looking at the latest satellite picture, you can see the well-defined eye right there, the eye of the hurricane, still showing us some good banding features with the hurricane, so still very well organized, very mature. And in fact, as we look at the forecast, we're still seeing some very favorable atmospheric conditions across this region, so it does look as if Estelle will continue to strengthen throughout the day today. The good news, though, with Estelle is that it's pulling away from the land areas, it's moving towards the west, so it poses no direct threat to any land areas. However, indirectly, we'll start to see some bigger seas and bigger swells being felt, perhaps around Baja California, maybe a couple days away, but we may eventually start to see some bigger swells too, at least for the southern-facing beaches in Southern California. Stateside, we've had a few showers and thunderstorms popping up, nothing too terribly strong right now, but come later today, they could really pack quite a punch. Stay tuned. We'll update the potential for severe weather, and we'll check out the hot stuff in Texas coming up in a moment.
Nothing changes faster than the...
It's 10 minutes till the top of the hour. We begin the new month and things are getting a little more active in the Tropical Weather Department. We'll be taking a look at the latest information on tropical weather. Also, speaking of active, the coastal waters along the Gulf of Mexico from Pascagoula to Lake Pontchartrain, several special marine warnings are in effect. That's putting a damper on our boating activity for the weekend. But again, we begin by giving you the update on tropical weather. Let's go out to the Atlantic. Alex is still a tropical storm, but Alex is no longer experiencing that weakening trend that we were talking about yesterday. The hurricane hunters did do a reconnaissance flight. I get excited. I can't talk too good, so let me slow down. But in this flight, they investigated Alex, and Alex has been strengthening the past 24 hours. And so we're looking at winds that are about 10 miles per hour stronger than what they were this time yesterday. The maximum sustained winds are now at 50 miles per hour. You'll notice, looking at the little dots that indicate the direction of the tracking, that we are still on a westerly direction, a little more northerly over the past 24 hours, but still the direction for the track is west-northwest at about 15 miles per hour. Now, you may recall that the estimated pressure was quite a bit lower than 1,010 millibars this time. I'm not sure what's indicating a strengthening in the, or a higher pressure for the center, but we'll continue to monitor this as well as the increase or any possible increase in the winds with Tropical Storm Alex. Again, yesterday it was just a minimal tropical storm, and now it's 10 miles per hour higher in strength for the sustained winds. One of the reasons we were seeing the weakening trend yesterday, as we look at the upper level wind flow, you'll notice that back here, a little bit further to the east of where Alex currently is positioned, we were seeing a very strong southerly wind flow. That wind flow was shearing a lot of the high cloud tops away from the low pressure center just to the north of that eye, or the center area of pressure. Well, the low pressure area is no longer under that strong shearing mechanism. It's now moving into an area a little bit more favorable, and that may be one reason why we have seen some strengthening in the past 24 hours. It'll be interesting to see if it continues this strengthening trend in the next 24 hours. Certainly, things are indicating that it will at least sustain itself. Now, we don't have any advisories or warnings posted for the Leeward Islands here. You'll notice that the current track is going to extend the tropical storm just to the north of the Leeward Islands, and so we will see some of the greater swells associated with the storm out here in the Atlantic. Okay, let's take a closer look. Here are the Lesser Antilles Islands here, and here's Alex, and with the direction, the momentum of its movement here to the north. Okay, so that's probably why we don't see any warnings or anything like that to alert the islands here. Looking at it on the infrared, this is the enhanced infrared. It shows you where the colder cloud tops are. A lot of this is the shearing, the cirrus clouds, the cold higher up cloud tops, but down to the south of this big shield is where the area, the center of the low pressure area is estimated to be. And yesterday we weren't seeing this. You see this right here, closer to the eye, we're beginning to see some of those colder cloud tops extend up, and that's an indication that the convection is strengthening when you see the cloud tops quite cold close to the center. And so what we're looking at here is possibly less shearing and more convection developing, and so we'll continue to watch that. Certainly it's interesting, and we're at that time of the year where development certainly is, statistically speaking, more favorable. Looking at the intertropical convergence zone, you'll notice that we have one wave here that came off the coastal areas of Africa, and yet another one coming over the coastal area, and so we'll watch this one too as things move along. In August, a more Statistically favorable time of the year for tropical development. Out towards the Bahamas, we continue to see an area of lower pressure. It's not showing very much in the organization, but we do see some moderate to strong convection associated with it, and so we'll watch that. We also have a low pressure area along an old frontal boundary that extends out into the Atlantic. This is the same front that's actually bringing us some cooler temperatures across the southeast and the Carolinas and in Georgia. A very nice day. Out towards Cuba, we're seeing afternoon thunderstorms develop, and again, just to the northeast of the Bahamas, we're seeing that convection associated with an area of lower pressure. Well, we say goodbye to July, hello to August, and no wonder, looking at the statistics, there they are, the peak season in September. We're not far away, so it's very likely we will see things begin to see different areas development pick up a bit, a little more active. Out towards the Pacific very quickly here, I just want to point out Hurricane Estelle moving away from Mexico, but the Baja should be experiencing waves a bit stronger, maybe 6 to 10 feet over the next 24-hour period. We'll be back. More details on the weather for you.
The weekend's off to a great start for you in the Northeast, but some parts of the country could see rain today. Details next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. We're at about 10 minutes until the top of the hour, and that means it is time for Storm Watch. And this being the Atlantic hurricane season, we look both at what is happening in the tropics and what is happening here at home. And we have some active weather in both areas. We'll start it off by heading south into the tropical Atlantic and Pacific with our tropical update. We'll start it off by taking a look at the upper level winds. Not the most easily understood pattern here. What we have, though, one thing I want to point out is we have an upper level trough sitting here. You can see that general circulation, that general counterclockwise circulation. And remember, areas of low pressure at upper levels of the atmosphere tend to suppress the development of tropical systems. And around the boundaries of them, we have this wind shear, and that's what Tropical Storm Alex is running into. Southwesterly wind shear, the winds blowing out of the southwest heading up to the northeast, and that is definitely having an effect on the storm. As of 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the latest advisory out of the National Hurricane Center, Alex centered about 360 miles east of the Leeward Islands, top winds about 50 miles an hour, and it's moving west-northwest at 15 miles an hour. Here's the big picture on it, and you can see here it is. We're still a ways away from the islands and certainly Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. We do have a couple other areas of unsettled weather to tell you about. There's one area of low pressure forming here between Bermuda and Hispaniola, and the National Hurricane Center is saying that this may slowly develop, so we'll be keeping an eye on that certainly. And then we have another swirl of clouds working this way across the Atlantic. The National Hurricane Center is keeping its eye on this, saying it may develop. We'll be looking at that. But let's bring it on a little tighter here on Tropical Storm Alex. And we still have some convection going on, but the actual center of the storm is not here under the convection. No, it's down here. The shear from those southwesterly winds at the upper levels of the atmosphere, which you can see by how these clouds are moving here, is blowing the convection off to the north and east. And that is where the strongest winds are, as reported by the Hurricane Hunter aircraft that went in late this afternoon into the early evening hours. As long as the storm is tracking in the direction it is now, no threat is posed to the islands by Tropical Storm Alex. It will still be under this shearing environment for the next day or so. If it hangs on through that and emerges out on the other side of that upper level trough into an area where the shear is less, we could see a potential redevelopment of the storm and strengthening of the storm. So we'll definitely be following Alex as it progresses west-northwest here, and let you know if it will have any future impact farther down the line in toward the United States. I told you there was another little circulation area that we're looking at, and that's here. You can see it circling and heading westbound. A little bit of convective activity close to the center, but certainly not too much at the present time. So we'll be watching for that to see if the convection starts firing up more right around the center of the circulation, and if it does, then we could be talking about perhaps the potential for formation of a tropical depression, but none happening right now. Likewise, nothing much happening into the Gulf and the Caribbean. We do have some thunderstorms that have moved off the coast, but so far no signs of any development. So this is a great time still to get prepared. Get those supplies ready. Get the plywood you might need to board up your windows if you live in a coastal area. We're still pretty early in the season, but now we're getting into August. We're starting to hit that big ramp up toward the statistical peak of the hurricanes in the Atlantic. So please do be prepared as we are starting to enter the quote-unquote meat of the hurricane season in the Atlantic. We already have a hurricane in the eastern Pacific. That is Hurricane Estelle. Latest advisory as of 8 p.m. Top winds 115 miles per hour, 8 p.m. Pacific time, by the way. Moving west at 15 miles an hour and centered about 624 miles southwest out of Cabo San Lucas. Here's a picture of what the storm